Honorable Steenhuisen.
Thank you very much, House Chair, and a great privilege to be part of this debate. Thank you for the warm and generous welcome from the ANC benches, as usual. 31st of March of this year was certainly a red letter day for President Zuma. In his landmark judgment, the Chief Justice spoke about the fact that, and I'm quoting here to be careful, constitutionalism, accountability, and the rule of law constitute the sharp and mighty sword that stands to chop the ugly head of impunity off its stiffened neck, and boy did they chop. What they essentially confirmed is that we have a president who has done everything he can to undermine South Africa. He's undermined this parliament. Mr. Zuma meant what he said when he told the nation that, I quote, the ANC comes first. That's why he felt nothing to put Latuli House before this House. He has treated this House with complete contempt. He sought to undermine and mislead it at every turn, from fictitious bonds to statements that no public money were used on his private house. And when this House did its best to hold him to account, the most presidential response that he could muster was a silly jig about Nkandla. That is the ugly head of impunity. He undermined the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. Mr. Zuma meant what he said when he told the nation, and I quote, that the ANC comes first, unquote. That's why he felt nothing to put his party constitution ahead of this constitution. That's why the Constitutional confirmed what this nation already knew, that Mr. Zuma violated the Constitution with his illegal conduct and inconsistency with his constitutional obligations. That is the ugly head of impunity. He undermined the judiciary. Mr. Zuma meant what he said when I quote, the ANC comes first, unquote. That's why he felt nothing about saying he wants his day in court, but has spent the last 7 years worming his way out of having to have it. That's also why he spoke out of the left side of his mouth, saying that he respects the findings of the court, yet barely a fortnight later, telling traditional leaders to, quote, not to trust the courts. That is the ugly head of impunity. He undermined the public protector. Mr. Zuma meant what he said when he told the nation that the ANC comes first, unquote. That's why he felt nothing by violating the Constitution and his oath of office by his sneaky substitution of the findings of the public protector with the findings of a police minister, a man who owes his very existence and livelihood to the president's will. That poor minister in Schleko's credibility and career lie in tatters, probably why he's not here today, after he was shoved out to defend the indefensible. Let me tell you, I would also have been sweating up a storm if I had to conduct the farcical fire pool dance. He and Ministers Deutsch, Mshlangu Nkabinda and Nesi have all learnt the hard way that there is no bridge that this president won't double cross to protect himself. That is the ugly head of impunity. And so we saw today parliamentary protocol being violated again. Usually the Mbongi comes in and speaks before the president. Today the chief whip spoke after the president. Nonetheless, I think it's an absolute disgrace, colleagues, a disgrace, that this ANC can come here and tell us about their fight against ARV and try and claim credit, while this same ANC sat on its hands during the Mbeki presidency and watched 300,000 of our citizens die an unnecessary death because you didn't have the guts to take on the president. What has changed? Nothing has changed. You said the president's apologized. He has not apologized. Not once. He's not offered South Africa an explanation. And of course, the greatest bunch of hypocrites that this parliament's ever seen. They come here and bemoan racists and people who talk about violence. Yet their MP Bongani Mkongi, who wanted to burn a building with citizens in it to the ground, burn them alive, still sits on the ANC benches. And then we had the Honourable Mantashe. Well, boy, that was a direct transmission from the outside edge of planet Zuma. I'm not surprised she's so excited about the SKA telescope. She'll be able to get a better view of planet Zuma. But perhaps let's just bring her to earth a little bit. Let's bring her to earth a little bit with some of the facts. 1, foreign direct investment down 74% in the last year alone. 2, business confidence at the lowest point since 2009. Point 3, we've dropped 42 spaces in the World Bank's competitiveness report since this president and Minister Davies took office. Hardly a record to be proud of. Then we had the Honourable Mashabane. Well, I see the Chief Whip of the ANC's found a novel way of keeping her awake at sittings. He gets her to speak. Only problem is she put nearly all of us back to sleep again, including the President, who we saw nodding off during it. And she quoted very liberally from our former President Mandela, but she didn't talk about the important quote that he made that directly related to her portfolio, and I quote, "Our belief that human rights should be the core pillar of international relations," unquote. Well, let me just tell you, there isn't a bloodthirsty, undemocratic despot that her department hasn't met and fallen in love with. Robert Mugabe, al-Bashir, King Mswati. I notice the minister's not in the house, probably off dining with one of those despots this evening on the taxpayer dollar. And then, of course, we have to deal with the wannabe. Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, our Deputy President, spoke about Africa Day, and he quoted Kwame Nkrumah quite extensively. Well, very convenient to quote these people. Well, he forgets that the same Mr. Nkrumah proposed a constitutional amendment to make the CPP his only party, the only legal party in his country, and himself president for life. Perhaps he has some great designs if he ever gets the presidency. And I must say, credit where it's due, Mr. Deputy President, you spoke 11 languages today. Hats off to you, sir. The bad news is that unsubstantiated fluff is unsubstantiated fluff no matter what language that you speak it in. And so we have the Gucci Marxist here quoting Kwame Nkrumah, all the while wearing his Gucci suit and cruising around in a 7 Series sedan. Hate to tell you, not locally manufactured. I saw your speech the other day. Sorry about that. And so now he comes to the House and says, we must retain the dignity of our workers. I wonder if the dignity of the workers was in his thoughts when he sent an email to his fellow Lonman fat cats, when he said, and I quote, "They are plainly dastardly criminal and must be characterized as such. There needs to be concomitant action." Well, we know what that concomitant action was. He also advised the Honourable Shabangu, who spoke today, that her silence and inaction were bad for her and bad for her government. We've got the emails, Honourable Shabangu, you can't deny it. He spoke about the People's Parliament. He can't even get his ministers here. But the poor man keeps accepting the poison chalices that Frank Underwood keeps passing him across the benches. And I feel sorry for him, because let me tell you, it must be very embarrassing when your previous boss, Ronald MacDonald, has more credibility than your current boss. He's exchanged the Golden Arches for poorly attended marches. But you see, he thought becoming president of the ANC and becoming president of the country was going to be easy as 1, 2, 3. You forgot the most important ABC, and that's the word that's going on your backbenches, anybody but Cyril. You've had 2 opportunities to take control of this country and re-steer it where it needs to go, Mr. Deputy President. You've bottled both of them. You're fast becoming yesterday's man. And so now we obviously turn to the fact of the ANC. And what a simpering bunch you've become. You know President Mbeki was right to sack this man, yet you don't have the guts to do the same thing, despite his constitutional violations. That's why you all look so dejected, like you've lost the election already. And so you go lurching from one crisis to the next all over the road. And so you said, what you don't realize is the people have seen through you, Honourable Shabangu. They've seen right through you. That's why you can't fill a stadium. Hell, you even struggle to fill school halls these days. All you do is lose in court. And that is why the opposition is filling stadiums. That is why the opposition is growing in Nelson Mandela Bay, Joburg and Tshwane. And that's why the people you've turned your back on are turning to the opposition. On the 3rd of August, the voters of South Africa will have the opportunity to chop the ugly head of impunity, and
Honourable
chop
member,
they
your
will.
time is up.